Jensen Huang said just one sentence, and within 2 trading days, nearly $500 billion in market value evaporated across Nvidia and Microsoft. Just 24 hours separated the biggest investment in history from "we never made any commitment." So was this a sudden flip? Was this Jensen changing his face overnight? No, this wasn't a mood swing. This was the underlying logic of the AI industry chain quietly but decisively shifting. What happened over this weekend may end up deciding the life or death of the tech stocks you're holding right now. And let's be very clear, this is not a technology problem. This is a money problem. Today, we're refocusing on just one question. When the guy selling shovels suddenly stops lending money to the gold miners, does the gold rush still make sense? And when OpenAI turns from a money-printing machine into a money-burning furnace, how exactly do its former allies start backing away, one by one, quietly, and without drama? If you think Jensen just changed his mind on impulse, then you're seriously underestimating him. Let's rewind and look at one of the most fascinating 24-hour contrasts we've seen in years. Saturday night, Taipei. Jensen had just wrapped up a private dinner with the biggest names in the supply chain, top executives from TSMC, Foxconn, all in the same room. Facing the cameras, Jensen looked almost emotional. Like someone in the middle of a honeymoon phase. He said, "We're going to invest. This could be the biggest investment in history. I truly love what OpenAI is doing. It's unbelievable." At that moment, the market exhaled. Everyone thought, it's done. Because in people's minds, OpenAI wasn't just another startup. It was the Federal Reserve of AI, the ultimate money printer. And money printers don't break. At least, that's what people believed. Wall Street analysts rushed to update their valuation models. Retail investors flooded social media with excitement. Some even started doing the math out loud. If Nvidia really puts in $100 billion, does OpenAI jump to a $300 billion valuation? Then came Sunday afternoon. Jensen appeared again, almost in the same location, on the same street, but the tone was completely different. When reporters pressed him on that $100 billion timeline, he didn't smile. He didn't explain. He simply said, "That $100 billion? Oh no, that was never a commitment. We'll take it one step at a time." Think about that for a second. From the biggest investment in history, to one step at a time, in just 24 hours. From passionate infatuation to cold distance, also in just 24 hours. That's not indecision. That's calculation. So what changed? The answer is hidden in a boring-sounding document, signed back in September, a non-binding letter of intent. In finance, everyone knows what that means. Legally speaking, it's almost meaningless. Its real function isn't commitment, it's optics. It generates headlines, it boosts confidence, it helps Sam Altman sell the next funding round at a higher valuation. But by February, Jensen didn't even want to acknowledge that document anymore. Why? Because the shovel seller started hesitating. Not because shovels aren't selling, but because the miners aren't digging up real gold. Jensen doesn't rely on Wall Street narratives. He looks at Nvidia's internal dashboards, shipment volumes, receivables, customer payment cycles, and what he saw was uncomfortable. He saw that OpenAI burned $8.5 billion last year, but generated just over $3 billion in revenue. That's a loss north of $5 billion, and the hole is getting deeper, not smaller. He saw GPT subscriptions slowing. What was once projected to reach 100 million paid users by 2026 now looks closer to half that. He saw enterprise customers hesitate on renewals. They tested GPT, ran the ROI numbers, and quietly decided, this doesn't justify the cost. And he saw what many people missed in Microsoft's earnings disclosures, those glossy slides, promising exponential growth now translate into nothing but exponentially rising bills. So let's be honest, if you were Jensen Huang, would you really take $100 billion earned from selling GPUs and hand it to a customer that loses tens of millions of dollars every single day, while openly talking about building its own chips to bypass you? Of course not. Capital may be ruthless, but it is brutally honest. Jensen's retreat sends one clear message. He ran the numbers, and this deal doesn't pay back. So he adjusted the strategy. I won't be your shareholder, I'll just be your supplier. You want GPUs? Fine, cash only. You want me to invest? Sorry, maybe next round. This is the core survival rule of Silicon Valley's old foxes. Never let emotion override business logic. And the market reacted instantly. In just 2 days, Nvidia's market cap dropped by $329 billion. Once the first domino falls, the rest rarely stop. As Nvidia tightened its wallet, Sam Altman moved fast. Reports surfaced that OpenAI has been actively searching for backup options. They've been in talks with chip startups like Cerebras and Grok since last year. The reasoning sounds harsh. They believe Nvidia's latest chips are not fast enough for inference. According to insiders, OpenAI has already begun small-scale internal testing of these alternatives. The ecosystem isn't mature, but the intent is real. This isn't posturing. This is survival instinct. On the surface, it looks aggressive. Nvidia just finished pitching performance and total cost of ownership, and OpenAI immediately hints at switching suppliers. But this isn't about technology, it's about economics. And there's one keyword you need to remember: inference cost. Training a model is expensive, but it's a one-time event. You spend $100 million training GPT-5, and once it's done, that money is gone. Inference is different. Every single user interaction burns electricity. Every prompt spins GPUs, and that cost grows linearly with users. If it costs 5 cents to generate 1,000 tokens, but you only collect 4 cents from users, you're not running a business, you're running a charity. The more popular you get, the faster you bleed. And when each H100 or H200 GPU costs $30,000 to $40,000, inefficiency doesn't hurt, it kills. That's why Altman needs backup options. Partly to stress test Nvidia, partly to send a message: don't think I have no alternatives. But notice OpenAI's final clarification. The vast majority of our inference still relies on Nvidia. Read between the lines. Too expensive to love. Too essential to leave. That's what monopoly power feels like. Nvidia doesn't sell chips, it sells future compute capacity. And when buyers start shopping around nervously, it means that future contract is under pressure. OpenAI is still standing. Oracle, on the other hand, is visibly nervous. The day after Jensen walked back his words, February 2nd, Oracle released an unusually defensive statement: the Nvidia OpenAI situation has zero impact on us. We remain fully confident in OpenAI's financing capability. If you believe that at face value, you probably believe everything politicians promise. When a public company rushes to say this doesn't affect us, it usually means it affects them a lot. Why is Oracle anxious? Because in this AI gamble, Oracle is the most leveraged player at the table. Let's look at the numbers. First, Oracle committed $300 billion in long-term compute capacity to OpenAI. Oracle's annual revenue is around $50 billion. That single promise equals 6 years of revenue. Second, to deliver on that promise, Oracle plans to issue $45 minus $50 billion in debt this year. With total debt already around $90 billion, that's a massive leverage jump. Third, where does the money go? Data centers. Nvidia GPUs immediately. Oracle is building data centers across more than 10 countries, all filled with H200s and upcoming B200s. The original logic was elegant. OpenAI raises money, pays Oracle for compute, Oracle buys Nvidia GPUs, Nvidia invests back into OpenAI, a self-feeding flywheel. But when Nvidia steps away, the wheel cracks. Oracle's worst nightmare isn't OpenAI collapsing overnight. It's OpenAI switching suppliers. If OpenAI reduces Nvidia usage or pivots to custom chips, who rents Oracle's newly built GPU data centers? These facilities aren't flexible, they're highly specialized. No customers means extremely expensive idle assets. Every idle second burns cash. Oracle's stock has already dropped. 2 days, $50 billion wiped out. And reports now suggest potential layoffs of 20,000 to 30,000 employees. Borrowing heavily while cutting staff is never a good sign. It means cash flow is under pressure. When a company says it's not worried at all, it usually means it's very worried in private. Now let's talk about Microsoft. Over the past few days, Microsoft shares fell 15%, erasing $450 billion in market cap, the worst performance among the Magnificent Seven. As OpenAI's biggest financial backer, deeply integrated at every level, Microsoft looks fully exposed. So where was Satya Nadella silent? On January 29th, 2 days before the storm, he casually said, "We have great relationships with Nvidia and AMD." Then nothing. No tweets, no letters, no emergency calls. Wall Street panicked. Retail investors mocked. Microsoft gave up. But this isn't surrender. This is preparation. Nadella is using this chaos to quietly execute a long-term plan, one even Altman may not fully grasp. The goal is simple. De-risk OpenAI. Everyone asks, if OpenAI fails, what happens to Microsoft? The better question is, what if OpenAI stops being special? Because that's exactly what Nadella wants. So what exactly is Satya Nadella doing behind the silence? Let's break it down into 3 very deliberate moves. Move number 1, building his own chips. Most people are staring at Nvidia and OpenAI, completely missing what Microsoft itself has been doing. At the end of January, Microsoft quietly released updates on its in-house Maya to chip. No flashy keynote, no hype, but the internal testing numbers were telling. In certain inference workloads, Maya 2 is already reaching around 80% of the cost efficiency of Nvidia's 100. Now, listen carefully to the logic here. Microsoft is not trying to beat Nvidia on raw performance. That's unrealistic in the short term. What Microsoft is trying to do is beat Nvidia at the negotiation table. If even 20 to 30% of Azure's AI workloads can run on Microsoft's own chips, Nadella gains leverage. He can calmly say to Jensen Huang, "Your B200 costs $40,000 per card. That's too expensive. Lower the price, or I'll shift part of the workload to my own silicon." That's not a threat. That's a bargaining chip. And there's an even deeper layer. This isn't just protection against Nvidia, it's insurance against OpenAI itself. If OpenAI really does try to partner with SoftBank, Samsung, or build something like the rumored Stargate project to bypass Nvidia, or even bypass Microsoft, then Microsoft already has a fallback. This is called dual supply chain redundancy. Microsoft doesn't need loyalty, it needs optionality. Move number 2, downgrading OpenAI from the only one to one of many. Open Azure AI Studio today and you'll notice something subtle but extremely important. So where was Satya Nadella silent? On January 29th, 2 days before the storm, he casually said, "We have great relationships with Nvidia and AMD." Then nothing. No tweets, no letters, no emergency calls. Wall Street panicked. Retail investors mocked. Microsoft gave up. But this isn't surrender. This is preparation. Nadella is using this chaos to quietly execute a long-term plan, one even Altman may not fully grasp. The goal is simple. Darius OpenAI. Everyone asks, if OpenAI fails, what happens to Microsoft? The better question is, what if OpenAI stops being special? Because that's exactly what Nadella wants. So what exactly is Satya Nadella doing behind the silence? Let's break it down into 3 very deliberate moves. Move number 1, building his own chips. Most people are staring at Nvidia and OpenAI, completely missing what Microsoft itself has been doing. At the end of January, Microsoft quietly released updates on its in-house Maya to chip. No flashy keynote, no hype, but the internal testing numbers were telling. In certain inference workloads, Maya 2 is already reaching around 80% of the cost efficiency of Nvidia's 100. Now, listen carefully to the logic here. Microsoft is not trying to beat Nvidia on raw performance. That's unrealistic in the short term. What Microsoft is trying to do is beat Nvidia at the negotiation table. If even 20 to 30% of Azure's AI workloads can run on Microsoft's own chips, Nadella gains leverage. He can calmly say to Jensen Huang, "Your B200 costs $40,000 per card. That's too expensive. Lower the price, or I'll shift part of the workload to my own silicon." That's not a threat. That's a bargaining chip. And there's an even deeper layer. This isn't just protection against Nvidia, it's insurance against OpenAI itself. If OpenAI really does try to partner with SoftBank, Samsung, or build something like the rumored Stargate project to bypass Nvidia, or even bypass Microsoft, then Microsoft already has a fallback. This is called dual supply chain redundancy. Microsoft doesn't need loyalty, it needs optionality. Move number 2, downgrading OpenAI from the only one to one of many. It's no longer just GPT everywhere. You now see Llama 3 from Meta, Mistral from France, Cohere from Canada, Claude from Anthropic. Microsoft even rolled out Model as a Service, allowing enterprise customers to switch models with a single click. Like choosing shampoo off a supermarket shelf. This tells you everything about Microsoft's real strategy. In Nadella's world, OpenAI is no longer a spouse. It's a premium option. The most beautiful rose in the garden, but not the only flower. If GPT runs into trouble, if Altman creates more drama, if lawsuits go south, Microsoft can instantly tell enterprise clients, try Llama instead. Half the price, similar results. And here's the sharpest knife of all. Microsoft is also deepening cooperation with Anthropic, the company behind Claude. Yes, that Anthropic, the one Jensen Huang publicly called the strongest AI at CES, the biggest competitor to OpenAI. This is not indecision. This is classic power logic. Never allow a partner to believe they are irreplaceable. Move number 3. Turning a stock crash into leverage. Why didn't Nadella explain Microsoft's 15% drop? Why stay silent while $450 billion in market value evaporated? Because he has cash, and more importantly, perspective. In Nadella's eyes, this isn't a fundamental collapse. This is the market pricing an OpenAI risk. Investors are treating Microsoft and OpenAI like conjoined twins, assuming that if OpenAI stumbles, Microsoft dies with it. But if you follow the logic we've just laid out, Microsoft is actively performing a separation surgery. And when markets panic, panic creates discounted chips, blood-stained bargaining chips. As long as Microsoft controls enterprise entry points, Office Teams, Azure, Active Directory, OpenAI, lives or dies. The value ultimately stays inside Microsoft's ecosystem. If the surgery succeeds, OpenAI may be weakened, But Microsoft emerges stronger, with a better immune system. That's why, behind closed doors, some institutional investors are quietly excited about this pullback. If you believe in AI, but not in cash-burning model companies, Microsoft is almost the only logical choice left. To greedy capital, a 15 to 20% drop isn't danger, it's a discount. Now, at this point, I want to bring in one key piece of external validation, A16Z. One of Silicon Valley's top venture capital firms recently released a deep research report titled Enterprise AI Leaders, Beneficiaries, and Unexpected Winners. The title sounds gentle, but the conclusion is brutal. I read it multiple times. And it confirms one harsh reality. The second half of the AI war has nothing to do with how smart your model is. The real winners will not be the companies with the highest IQ models, but the companies that control your mouse and keyboard. Let's ground this in a real enterprise decision-making scenario. Imagine you're the CFO of a public company, preparing the 2025 annual report. You're staring at a massive Excel file filled with sensitive financial data. Scenario A, ChatGPT-style workflow. You open a browser, log in, Alt-Tab back to Excel, copy sensitive data, Alt-Tab again, paste it into a prompt, type instructions, wait, copy the output, Alt-Tab back, paste, reformat, at least 15 to 20 separate actions. And somewhere in that process, you just pasted your company's core financial secrets onto servers you don't control, in locations you don't know. Any CIO who understands security would have a heart attack. Scenario B, Microsoft Copilot. You never leave Excel, you don't touch the mouse. There's one more fatal weakness that pure model companies simply cannot solve. It's called context and permission. Microsoft's Active Directory knows who you are, what department you belong to, what documents you're allowed to see. Copilot won't show CEO-level strategy to interns. It won't leak HR salary data to sales. ChatGPT cannot do this. To enterprises, ChatGPT is an outsider. Feed your internal data into it, and you risk catastrophic leaks. That's why A16Z's conclusion is so cold. With Windows, Azure, and enterprise identity systems, Microsoft has a distribution and deployment advantage that even OpenAI cannot replicate. You must get infinitely close to users, or you will eventually be abandoned. At this point, the endgame becomes very clear. Satya Nadella is turning OpenAI into the next Intel. Think back to the PC era. Intel's technology was incredible. Moore's law ruled everything. Intel Inside stickers were everywhere. At its peak, Intel's market cap reached nearly $500 billion, making it the most valuable chip company in the world. But who captured the real profits? Who controlled the user? Not Intel. Microsoft. Users don't interact with CPUs, they interact with Windows. A faster CPU doesn't matter if the operating system doesn't care. Now look at Intel today. Its market cap sits just over $100 billion, overshadowed by TSMC, Nvidia, and AMD. Why? Because Intel became a component supplier, not a platform. When components become commodities, margins collapse. And today's script is almost identical. OpenAI is Intel, GPT-5, GPT-6 in Nadella's eyes. They're just faster CPUs. Office 365 is the new Windows. Sounds amazing, but none of that matters if you fail to gates, scale, and ecosystem. Cerebra's uses wafer-scale chips, one entire wafer per chip. It's elegant, but yields are terrible. If one defect appears, the entire wafer is scrap. That means annual output in the thousands. Nvidia shipped 1.5 million H100 and H200 GPUs last year. That's a 300 difference. Even if OpenAI wants Cerebras, there simply aren't enough chips. Grok's problem is worse. It can't even secure priority capacity at TSMC. AI isn't a game of 10% faster. It's a game of can you ship 1 million units this year. And then there's the real moat, CUDA. Over 90% of AI developers globally build on CUDA. All major frameworks, PyTorch, TensorFlow, JAX, optimize for Nvidia first. Switching chips isn't just hardware. It means rewriting code, retraining engineers, retesting models. That switching cost can be 10 times higher than simply paying NVIDIA's premium. That's NVIDIA's real fortress. Not the chip, the ecosystem. So OpenAI's conversations with alternative chipmakers are, at their core, negotiation theater. Altman is signaling, I have options. Jensen knows it's mostly a bluff. That's why he can confidently say, on a Taipei street, that $100 billion was never a commitment, because he knows the truth. OpenAI can't leave Nvidia, easily, but Nvidia can afford to walk away from OpenAI. Now, finally, the question investors actually care about. What should you do? 3 things to avoid. First, avoid pure model companies. If a company's moat is our model is 3% smarter, stay away. Models are commoditizing fast. Second, avoid cloud companies overloaded with GPUs and single customer risk. High leverage cuts both ways. Third, avoid AI stories without cash flow. By 2026, this industry is shifting from valuation hype to profit verification. 3 areas worth watching. 1. Entry point companies. Whoever controls the mouse and keyboard controls monetization. Microsoft, Google, Adobe. 2. The water sellers, not the gold miners. Nvidia remains structurally advantaged. 3. Cash flow positive vertical AI companies. Unsexy, quiet, but real businesses. We've now dissected this AI divorce from start to finish. Jensen Huang didn't walk away because he stopped believing. He walked away because he finally understood something clearly. In every gold rush, very few people actually find gold. Most burn money and tell stories. The real winners sell shovels, sell water, and charge tolls. As Buffett once said, when the tide goes out, you find out who's been swimming naked. The tide is going out now. Never a commitment was the flare. More breakups are coming. More myths will collapse. As an investor, your job isn't panic, it's clarity. See who is truly making money and who is pretending to.